Thank you very much, Jake. Hey, Joshua. Hey, Malik. Great to have you here. I think we have some other people coming, and I'm not sure if I can see everybody, but wanted to go ahead and get started. This is the third of three sessions. I'm going to share my screen here in a second. I got to get back to that button. But third of three sessions help you get hired, hopefully get the right job, and negotiate the highest possible salary. So the first session, we talked about your job search strategy, how you should use your time, how you should think about your job search, all of that kind of big picture stuff. The second session, we talked about how to build your resume and write your cover letters in a compelling way that will help you to get those interviews. Now we're going to talk about what to do in those interviews. And I'll review a couple of things real quick, but we're going to talk about how to do well in an interview so that you actually get the offer, which of course is what everybody wants. I requested access to share, and it looks like that's working now. Thank you very much. So can you all see my screen? Perfect. Okay. Thank you. So like I said, third of three sessions, talking about interviews and negotiating offers today. If you have any interview questions, like specific questions that have stumped you in the past, or you're not sure what you should do, put those in the chat, please, and I will try to get to as much as I can. We talked about strategy, stories, your resume, networking. Now we're diving into interviews and negotiating, which are the last steps in this whole process of getting a great offer, or hopefully multiple great offers. The first thing I want to say is that a civilian job interview is very different than a military board. And I've seen a lot of veteran candidates make this mistake. They go into an interview, they seem like they've never smiled before. They're very tense, and that doesn't go well for them. When I got hired by Deloitte, I got feedback that I didn't smile enough. And I was like, you got to be kidding. Like I was smiling as much as possible.
John, I think you're frozen. Josh, Malik, are you guys there?
It is not a promotion board. You
I think it
can.
froze for a second, but I'm back.
Oh, great.
John, you actually froze for the last 15 seconds.
Sorry about that. I did not know that. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, now we can.
Okay. So I was just saying that you can relax a little bit. It's not a promotion board. You are expected to smile. You're expected to be at ease. And there are a lot of military candidates that forget to smile, and they're very serious during an interview, and it doesn't work well for them. So try to relax. You do not have to sit with your knees, at a 90-degree angle with your hands on your knees. You are supposed to relax, and we'll talk more about that. Real quick reminder on referrals, which we talked about last time. Having a referral is so critical to getting the interview in the first place. You got to have those networking conversations. And I'm not going to spend too much time on that because we talked about it before, but referrals are very important. They will help you during the interview process as well. You can talk about who you know at the company, what you've learned from them, so that when they ask you, why do you want to work here? You can say, well, one of my old coworkers, Tom, works here. He's had nothing but good things to say about the work that he does and the culture and the leaders. And it sounds like a place where I would really enjoy being part of the team. So referrals go a long way in the interview as well. Couple high level points. You could expect to get an interview for every 6 applications. I think that's actually high. That's one of the stats online, but I would say, if you get an interview for every 10 or 20 applications you submit, if those are high quality applications, then you should not be disappointed. That's not a low number. Offer decisions take longer than you want them to. The whole interview process usually takes about 4 weeks from your first round to your second round, maybe a final round. When I interviewed for Deloitte, I actually had 10 interviews over 6 months. And that was unusually long for some unique reasons, but it will probably take longer than you want it to. don't get discouraged. You can reach out to a recruiter or your interviewer and, ask when you should expect to hear back, or say, thank you for taking the time to speak with me. I appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure, I'm looking for your email and things like that, but don't hound them daily for an update. I'd say following up the next day and thanking them for their time is great. Maybe the next week if you haven't heard from them by then, but don't send daily emails. It's going to take a little while. Most interviewers reject people who do not dress well. It's shocking, even at the MBA level, how many people fail interviews because they don't dress for the part. There's an old saying that if you're asking for money, you should wear a tie. And I don't wear ties for interviews now because I think the world is a little less formal, but wearing a jacket does go a long way. A suit jacket and collared shirt. So don't wear a t-shirt to an interview. I saw an MBA do that recently. And, I know some companies like Google are less formal, but I would always aim to be one level more formal than the person interviewing me. I think that's a good rule. You don't want to look like you're, so casual you don't care. So dress for the interview. Make sure you do your research too. Knowing what's going on with the company goes a long way. It lets you ask very relevant questions, and you can show them that you are the type of person who does their homework and really wants to be there. But if you go into an interview and you didn't know that their stock crashed that morning, then that's unfortunate. You should know that type of thing. Or if they had a big press release about a new product coming out, you need to do a quick search of that company in the news. Just go to Google News and know what's going on before the interview. And if you can ask really targeted questions about recent things that have happened or the interviewer's specific line of work going into that interview, then that will look really good. And lastly, confidence is contagious. The more confident you are, the more confident they are likely to be about you. Of course, you don't want to be arrogant, but being confident about yourself, speaking confidently, standing up straight, looking people in the eye, shaking someone's hand confidently, all of that goes really far to help them believe in you as a candidate. Work history. This is another time where I saw a veteran make a big mistake that really shot him in the foot. We were sitting in a round table, 5 or 6 veteran candidates with the COO of the company, and he asked each of us why we were looking for new opportunities, why we were interested in going to Deloitte. And everyone gave their answer, and one of them said, I left the Army because I felt like I couldn't do any good there and nobody listened to me, and it was kind of a waste of my time. And he tried to sugarcoat it a little bit, but it was negative enough to the point where I could tell instantly that he had lost any chance of getting a job offer because it looked like he was a complainer and he had that negative attitude. He may have been 100% correct. It may have been unfair why he left the Army, what his circumstances were. But if you look like a complainer, if you complain about your previous boss or the company or the culture or the pay, then it's going to put a bad taste in their mouth about you. So try to stay on the positive side. And remember that everyone is looking for new opportunities. All of the candidates who are applying, everybody they interview, they all have a reason why they want to leave wherever they were before. Unless you're coming straight out of business school or straight out of school, whatever program, then there's a reason. And there's even a reason why people go back to school. So put that in a positive light. Say, I loved this and that about my old company. Find something positive to say about your last opportunity. Or I loved the Navy. I learned a lot there. However, I was excited about moving into the private sector and learning more about AI or something. Put that spin on it. Here's what I enjoyed about my last role. Here's what I appreciated. However, I wanted to learn more. I wanted to try something new, and that will go much better than complaining about wherever you're coming from. I talked a lot. I'm going to stop right there. Any questions or thoughts so far on what we covered?
Good so far.
I'm
Awesome.
good.
Awesome. Okay. Let's talk about mirroring. So mirroring is the idea of copying somebody's body language because it builds rapport. We like people or we trust people more who are similar to us. Is our default nature. So if one person is leaning in and the other one is leaning back, the person who's leaning in might feel like that other person leaning back is disengaged, they don't care. And so as an interviewee, you want to mirror your interviewer's body language without being dramatic or, sarcastic about it. Don't cross your legs and uncross them immediately as they do. But you should have the same general posture as them. Again, I would say maybe err on being a little bit more formal than they are, but it's okay to relax a little if they relax and copy them, and that builds trust. So a lot of people talk about body language, but what I've noticed is that it goes much farther than that. We can mirror each other in terms of formality, the way we speak, if you use contractions or not, if you use big words or not, your posture, how upright you sit. I've seen a lot of military candidates who, sat straight up in the chair, and that's what we would expect in the military. That's not what's expected in an interview. And so I adopted kind of this little bit of an elbow lean on the armrest of the chair, and you can go back and forth. And that feels informal for a lot of military people, but it's going to be the right level of formality for most of these civilian interviews. Energy, if someone is very animated, you should probably pick up your energy level and be a little bit louder and more energetic like them. Volume, same thing. Let's say you are a 6'4" man interviewing with a shorter woman. You don't want to be a lot louder than her. You don't want her to feel like you're dominating the room and taking up all the oxygen in the room. Be aware of those types of things, and that will really help you out. Same thing with speed. If you're in the South or speaking with someone from Louisiana, they might speak much slower than you. And you don't want to talk faster because you're impatient. You want to slow down and match their speed. And if you can mirror people in all these ways, their energy, their speed, their volume, their body language, it's really going to help you connect with that person. This is not about manipulating people or, deceiving them. It's about building rapport. And these are very common psychological tools and approaches used in a lot of different professions, not just in interviewing. All right, feedback. We want to show that we're coachable during an interview. And there are times when the interviewer might give you some feedback and hint at how they want you to answer better or differently, or even tell you what answer they're looking for. And if you pick up on those cues, you're going to come across much better as someone who is coachable. So if they say, can you tell me more, a couple times, you're probably not giving long enough answers. Try to anticipate that the next time you give an answer. What was the outcome? Sometimes people talk about what they did without telling what the end result was. So we want to make sure we emphasize that end result. If they ask a question like, what's an M16? You should realize that you're using military jargon and not everybody knows all of the terminology that you're used to. So put things in the simplest form you can. And if you notice that they're bored or distracted, you might need to lean in, you might need to speak louder, you might need to stop rambling, but pay attention to the cues they're giving you and how they're listening. And this also happens with case interviews. If you're interviewing for a consulting firm or Amazon uses a lot of case interviews, you're supposed to figure out the solution to a problem in the case. And a lot of times the interviewer will point you in the right direction to help you out. If you ignore that advice that they're giving you and say, no, I think it's something else, it's not showing very good personal awareness or situational awareness. So listen to the cues that they give you throughout the interview to help you do well and try to respond accordingly. All right, questions. At the end of your interview, usually at the end, the interviewer will ask you what questions you have. Sometimes they ask earlier. But I would challenge you to use them focused questions, meaning questions that are about the company and the interviewer themselves, rather than questions that are about what's in it for you. So, what do you love about working here? This is a very positive question, right? You are reminding them of things they like about the company. They get to talk about themselves. Same thing with this one down here at the bottom. What has helped you be successful here? This gives them a chance to brag. It's a little bit flattering, but you're keeping things positive and you're learning about them and the company rather than what's in it for you. Asking about benefits, asking about salary, or the work from home policy, all of that is going to make them think that you're more interested in what you can get out of them rather than the opportunity and the mission of the company itself. So ask the right type of questions, them focus questions. And for things like what are the benefits, what's the work from home policy, those are things that you can learn outside of the formal interview and probably should during your networking calls leading up to getting the interview invitation and even after the interview. There's always a salary conversation that happens, but I like to have that after the interviews. I don't think it's a good use of time. Your point in the actual formal interview should be to build rapport and trust and some type of personal relationship with that person rather than finding out all of the metrics about the job. So have these questions ready to go so that when they ask you what questions you actually have some and they're good ones and they're not about you. Questions so far? All right. So first question I want to talk about is walk me through your resume. Chances are very high that you will get a similar question to this. Basically, the interviewer is busy. They may not have even looked at your resume. They might not know anything about you, or they just want to hear it in your own words. And they say, hey, tell me who you are. That's really what this question is. Where'd you come from? What have you done? Of course, they can read it off your resume, but I would encourage you to add a little bit of color. Tell them why you went from one job to another, why you decided to go back to school, and give them a high-level overview of your experience and your education that's relevant for that position. Tell me about yourself. Same thing, although this is a little bit more personal. What do you do outside of work? You could include some of your hobbies, something like that. But basically, same thing. Tell me who you are. Why do you want to work here, or why did you decide to apply for this position? Again, this is getting to the why. People want to understand what motivates you. They want to make sure that you are a good fit for their company and their culture because of your motivations and what you care about. So I would not talk about the money here or the work from home policy. I would talk about their mission, how they help people, how innovative they are, the things that you've heard from the people you've talked to in your networking calls or your friends that work there, and the positive things that you know about the company rather than talking about what's in it for you. Again, same thing, right? But you should be prepared to tell them why you decided to apply to that company specifically and that role. What are your 3 greatest strengths? Is anyone brave enough to be put on the spot and tell us what they would answer with for their 3 greatest strengths?
I would say perseverance is my first one. Not knowing how to count. I guess that's my weakness right there. Forgot you asked for 3. I don't know. I guess I'll put myself on the spot. Perseverance. I love talking with people and I love exploring, seeing the rest of the world. So I feel like I'm a very personable person.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a challenging question because you don't want to brag too much, but you do want to say positive things. You can show a little bit of humility. You could say, I used to not be really good at this, so I decided to learn it, and now I feel like I'm really good at whatever now. You might want to balance personal or interpersonal skills like getting along well with people or being a good leader, with something more technical, like I'm really good at, you know, this coding language, um, and perseverance is fantastic. Everybody wants someone who's dedicated and, you know, going to fight through. And then something interpersonal, like you're really good at resolving conflicts. So just think about that beforehand. Have these answers beforehand. Practice writing them down and saying them, because you do not want to be evaluating your entire life searching for the three things that you want to define you in the heat of the question. A little bit of prep goes a long way. Same thing for weakness. Anybody have a what's your greatest weakness response that they've been working on for interviews? Or an idea of what might be a good response to this question?
I feel like I will try to bite off more than I can chew if I feel like I'm going to be helping out another team member or the team in general, but to the point where I have too much on my plate and it would take away from my main responsibilities.
Bingo. I actually think that's the best answer I've come across, saying that you have a tendency to overcommit. And of course, don't say it if it's not true. But for me, saying I take on too much, I want to help everybody, I want to do everything. And I've realized that that can hurt how much I'm able to really add value to any, one thing. So when you answer this question, show some self-awareness, say, hey, I got feedback a couple of years ago that I was struggling with overcommitting. Since then, I've been working on being very intentional about my priorities and what I commit to. And that has helped me do better and complete projects faster. So then I can help people with a clean slate, something like that. But show the journey that you've been on to improve in that area. Don't just say, I'm a really bad procrastinator, and not talk about how you have been improving in that area or trying to improve. And I would not recommend saying that you're a procrastinator at all for this question. All right. Why did you leave your last position, or why are you leaving your current position? What we talked about earlier, give the positives. It's kind of a compliment sandwich. You want to have the positives and maybe the negative, and then end on a positive note. Or just say, I loved where I was at. I learned a lot there. However, I felt like I could grow faster, or I could learn more by coming to your company, or I've heard great things about this company and I wanted to get a different perspective. That type of answer will do much better than saying your last boss was a jerk and Karen always stole your lunch or something. What's your greatest accomplishment? Any ideas on this one? Josh, Malik? For this, I would just say keep it work related if you can. If you ran a 3-hour marathon or something, totally fine to mention that. People are impressed by accomplishments outside of work too. And of course, your goal is not just to impress people, it's to get to know them personally and to be memorable. If they're interviewing 20 candidates, it's nice to be remembered as the runner or the swimmer or something. Personally, I stay away from mentioning family accomplishments. I have 5 daughters. That's not something that I usually mention during an interview. I told somebody that once and they said, well, gosh, how are you ever going to have time to do any work? So I leave personal stuff outside of interviews. Although that might be a good test to see if they're the type of company that you want to work for, talking about your family. But if you can mention something that you did relevant to that role and a work accomplishment, then that would be great. And one more note here, I would balance saying what you accomplished versus what your team accomplished, and just show the self-awareness that it was not just you, the humility that you were part of a bigger team that also helped you be successful. What questions do you have for us? We alluded to this earlier. You want to have some questions written down and keep it positive. Ask them about their experience. And if they talk a lot, that's great. There are actually studies that show that the more the interviewer talks, the higher they will rate you. Because there are some candidates who don't listen very well. They want to talk the whole time. And some of these interviewers have maybe not been in a leadership position very long. And so for you to just show the humility to sit there and listen to them and let them talk is something that they really appreciate. Maybe they feel like they get talked over in meetings, but the more you let them talk, the better they typically will rate a candidate. Just pay attention. If they seem like they want to talk a lot, then let them talk. I've had interviews where I said a handful of sentences and they thought I was great. And it's a lot easier for you to just sit there and listen too than to potentially say something that doesn't come across right. So have a default to listen, ask questions, and get them to talk. You might get asked what other companies you're applying to. This is a tough one. You should know who their competitors are. I like to highlight why I'm applying to this company specifically. So if you're applying to, Apple, you might say that you're applying to Google and Amazon as well. However, you really love Apple's mission. They're your first choice. You have wanted to work for Apple for a long time. Let them know that they are more of a priority for you, if that's true, of course. But it's okay to mention that you're applying to other companies. And if you are in the interview process with them, that's great to mention too. You want them to know that you are in demand and that if they don't move quickly and get you an offer, that you might go somewhere else. A little bit of pressure is okay. What salary are you looking for? This is a tricky question. The worst form of this question is when they ask you how much you currently make. Personally, I think that's a rude question. It's a bit aggressive and personal, but some people will ask it and they want to know how much you're currently making because they'll come back and they'll offer you about 5% more than your current salary. What I like to do is give people a range of 5 to 20% more than I'm currently making. And that's worked out pretty well for most of the people that I'm working with, that I've coached through this process. So if you're making 100,000, tell them 105 to 120. Give them a range that you would be happy with, that you would probably accept an offer within, but leave that upside so that you don't just accept the bare minimum. If you say, I make 100,000 now, I'd love to make 105, they'll say, great, we'll give you 105. If you give them a range, 105 to 120, they'll probably come back, somewhere in the middle, maybe the 30th percentile or something. But then you've got some room to negotiate. If they ask you exactly how much you make right now, you could deflect that by saying, I'm not sure with bonuses and everything exactly what it comes out to, but I'm looking for a role in the 200 to 250 range, something like that. You just want to make sure that your bottom of that range is not above their top. And I'll show you that in a second here. But range is good. That's the key thing. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I would avoid giving a title here. You don't want to say, I want your job in 5 years. I expect to be a director in 5 years. That seems very you focused. I would instead focus on what you hope to learn and master. So, you want to be a subject matter expert in AI implementation or whatever. Talk about a skill that you really want to master rather than a title. What's your leadership style? Given that you may be coming from the military, people have certain stigmas about military leaders. You want to deflect those and say, in the Marine Corps, in the Navy, I learned that people are more responsive to a personal leadership style. I've learned to really get to know the people that I work with and show them that I care about them while at the same time being, firm about the work that we do. And I've learned to be fair. Sometimes people think I'm, strict but fair. Whatever you want to say, show some self-awareness, show that you are not a drill instructor, and have an answer ready for this beforehand so you don't have to think on the spot. How do you deal with pressure? A lot of people are worried about hiring someone that cracks under pressure or snaps. And of course, most military people are used to a lot of pressure, having people's lives on the line, but you have to have an answer for this. You could say you talk to your spouse, you go to the gym, you have one-on-one conversations with people, you try to address problems before they grow. But this is an important question to pre-think your answer to before you go into the interview. That will help you not say something you regret and give a good answer without stressing. What's your favorite dinosaur? I have gotten this question before, and it is meant to throw you off a little bit. This is a very common type of question, and your job is to go with the flow. Whatever they ask you, don't say, "Are you serious?" Don't say, "Are you kidding me? I went to Harvard. I shouldn't have to answer stupid questions like this." People actually react like this sometimes. So if they ask you what your favorite dinosaur is, think back to the last time you watched Jurassic Park and pick a dinosaur and explain why. And have some type of justification. Explain that you love T-Rexes because when you were a kid, they were the coolest thing in the world. But give them a reason, and don't get upset about a silly question, because that is the test. What motivates you? You can talk about helping people. You can talk about making a difference. You could talk about making the human race interplanetary by settling Mars. Have a reason for why you do things above and beyond the money, and a passion for not starving. And this is a good chance to tell a story too. It's always better to tell a story that explains who you are rather than just telling them. So you could say, "This is why I went back to school. I wanted to become a better leader. I wanted to make a difference. I felt like there were things that I could learn in business school that would help me have more of an impact." Explain what motivates you through a story instead of just telling them who you are. Prove it. What should I know that's not on your resume? This is kind of a get out of jail free card. It's your chance to tell them whatever you want to about who you are. Maybe you have a gap in your resume you want to explain. What should I know that's not on your resume? Think about how you can point something out about yourself. Maybe tell a story that illustrates who you are, that's relevant for the job, that shows the perseverance or whatever strengths you mentioned in that other question, and use this as a chance to say whatever you want to say. Same thing with what question do you wish I had asked? This is a nice interviewer giving you a chance to say whatever you want to about yourself. So be prepared. All right. Let's talk about negotiating for a minute. When I got my offer from Deloitte, I was flattered. It was a great offer. I went to my negotiating professor and I said, "I don't think I'm going to negotiate this offer. It's a strong offer, and I feel like it would be disrespectful for me to ask for more." And she got inside my head. She said, "I understand why you would be scared to negotiate. So it's fine if you don't." And I said, I'm not scared. Like, I just don't think I need to. And she said, "Well, if you're fine with leaving money on the table, then there's no reason to negotiate." So I took a risk, what felt like a risk to me, and I asked for more. And the way I did that was by writing a letter to the recruiter who had sent me the offer in writing. And I said, thank you so much. This is a generous offer. I'm excited about the opportunity to join Deloitte. However, I've heard from some of my classmates, and this was true. I've heard from some of my classmates that they received X and Y bonuses because they were going to the private sector practice. I was going to the government sector practice, long story. But I said, this is what I've heard others have been offered. If you would be willing to match that for me, I would accept that offer right away. And I think that was really important to say, this is what feels fair based on what I heard. And if you can match that, then I will accept right away, because they don't want to go back and forth on this. They want certainty that if they come up, that you're going to accept. And so I provided a justification for asking for more, a reasonable, objective justification. This is what my classmates are getting from the same company. And if you just ask for money without a reason, that's when you look greedy. You know, they say 140, you say, I want 160. Well, why? You have to explain why and not be antagonistic about it. This line down here, build trust while negotiating. I did that by saying, this is what I understand is fair and reasonable, rather than just demanding more money. So I wrote this letter, sent it to the recruiter. He got back to me right away. They actually offered me more than what I asked for. And that was a lesson learned for me. Again, they were building trust. They wanted me to know that they really wanted me. And they were not just trying to haggle me down to the lowest possible compensation. So they offered me more than what I asked for. And I realized that I should always negotiate. And so should you. So fast forward a few years ago, I was helping two people get hired by Deloitte. I coached them through the interview process. They both got offers. True story. And I said, you've got to negotiate. Here's my story. I made an extra 50 grand a year, literally, by negotiating. I sent one letter. They offered me more. And I told that to both of them. One of them negotiated their offer and they got 5 figures more. And the other person didn't. They let it get inside their head. They were worried about looking selfish or greedy, and they didn't negotiate, and they left that money on the table. So I just mentioned that because sometimes we overthink it, and you may actually be respected more for negotiating than if you don't, because as a professional, you should be advocating for yourself. You should be going after what you deserve, what you think you're worth. And you can do that in a respectful way that actually builds trust. And there's a lot of different terms that you can negotiate. PTO and your start date are often negotiated. PTO is very often negotiated, not just your base salary. Of course, that's great to negotiate. Your bonus structure, you can negotiate that. So think about ways that you can get creative to find things that would be good for you. I've seen people negotiate being able to work fully remote, and that's been great for them. So please negotiate. I respect people more when they try to negotiate respectfully than if they don't. I'll stop there. Questions on negotiating?
I guess I got one quick question.
Yeah.
So like I guess if you start an internship, is that is that okay to negotiate? And then I guess let's say I guess once you finish that internship and you get a full-time offer, right? Obviously they knew how much you were making during the internship. Is that like I guess how would you negotiate that?
Yeah, good question. Some internships pay a lot less than the full-time job. I know someone who got an internship offer from Lockheed Martin to work at Skunk Works, you know, the secret squirrel division of Lockheed Martin, and it paid $20 an hour. And he's like, guys, I'm an MBA candidate. Like, you can't offer me the same internship salary or hourly rate as the undergrads. But they did, because they didn't actually have an internship program set up. They created it for him. They liked him. He was an Army guy. And they said, we would love to have you come intern. And they just put $20 on it. And they weren't willing to negotiate, unfortunately. So he had to decide how much that opportunity was worth to him. At that point, I don't think it's worth negotiating the internship pay. Most internships are, a few weeks. And they will remember that when they choose who to give a full-time offer. So personally, I would not negotiate internship pay. I would wait until getting a full-time offer in hand and then negotiate your full-time salary. But there could be things that you ask for, in the internship, like housing, if you need to relocate. Just explain, hey, the cost of living in Boston is really high. I would love to work with you. However, if you could help me with a housing allowance, that would be really helpful for me to be successful during this internship. So something like that. Does that help?
Yes.
Hope it helps.
Yeah.
Do you have an internship offer in hand right now you're thinking about?
Well, yeah, I accepted one, and then I guess during the conversation they also mentioned basically bring me on next year, full time. So I was kind of like, planning forward, like what does that look like? Do I negotiate? Am I in a position to negotiate? Like what does that look like? Or kind of just
Yeah.
curious thoughts.
How long is the internship for? Is it like a summer internship?
Yeah, it's a summer internship. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I would treat that internship like a job interview. Every day, show them you're reliable, show them you have a positive work attitude, good work ethic, and you get things done. And then toward the end of the summer, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the end of the summer, ask them what the process looks like for you to be evaluated for a full-time offer. Make sure you express that you would be very interested in staying with them long term. And once you get that offer in writing, that's when I would start to negotiate. I would not ask for more until you get something in writing, unless they ask you what salary you're looking for, and then you give them the range.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. What else?
This is Malik. Are there any red flags in terms of if they come back to you with something, or if there's something they say where they want to give you more time for the offer, or they don't meet you in the middle of a salary negotiation, where it's like a red flag? Well, maybe you don't want to work for that company, or should look elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't like exploding offers. When a company gives you 48 hours to accept, that is unfortunate. And countering is one technique to give yourself more of a window. So let's say you got an offer from company A, you expect company B to potentially give you an offer in the next 2 weeks. You get an exploding offer from company A, they say you have 48 hours to accept. I think that's unprofessional, but it does happen a lot out there. And I would just respond and say, hey, thank you for your offer. I would love the opportunity to work with you. However, if you could, meet me here on points 1 and 2, I'd be happy to accept. And then that will probably take them a few days to come back to you. So that'll buy you some time. And then you go to company B and say, hey, company A just made me an offer. I only have a short window to accept. And hopefully that helps company B, give you that offer as well. So it is okay to play companies off of each other. That is very expected. I know someone who got offers from both Google and Microsoft, and he bounced them back and forth several times, like 10 times, saying, hey, Microsoft offered me this much. Okay, Google offered me this much, until he got to a salary of like 350,000 as a first year undergrad, 22 or 23. So he was in a specialized field, but companies expect to be played off of each other. Just don't be insincere about it. Don't make up fake offers, don't treat people poorly just because you have a backup option. But it's totally okay to say, hey, I have an offer over here. However, I would love the opportunity to work with you. Do you think you could, make me an offer and maybe expedite that? So exploding offers, kind of a red flag. Some people just don't negotiate. Some companies don't negotiate. it's helpful to know that by speaking to other people. Yeah. And, you know, if it's the best opportunity you have, you don't have to stay there forever. If you don't get the salary you're looking for, it's okay to accept and then keep looking. Um, I wouldn't jump companies every 2 or 3 months. That will, you know, damage your reputation pretty quickly. But just because you accept an offer doesn't mean you have to stay there for 5 or 10 years either. You can leave after a year. I don't know what the average tenure at a company is now, but I think it's like a year to a year and a half. So
Okay, no, thank you. And the offers, they're not. I guess companies are just, you know, I guess they're not expecting to see any other offers or anything. They're going based on what you tell them, and you just have to keep it reason. You know, I guess if they thought an offer from another company was just too unreasonable or something, then they just wouldn't counter it. They would just keep offering what you had offered already. Correct?
yeah, I mean they might not come up as much as the other company, but they could come up a little. Google, from what I understand, does want to see the other offer. So I don't know if you send them the whole thing or if you black out part of it, but they want you to prove basically how much you're able to make elsewhere to justify paying you more. But most companies don't ask to see the other offer. You know, they might not even ask which company it is that you have an offer from. If you can say that you have an offer from a Fortune 100 company, then that will probably make you look better and convince them that it's a high paying offer. But most companies are not going to ask you to like send them a PDF of your written offer.
Got it. And when you counter it, just show them, you know, just tell them to have received an offer for this amount from another company. Can you match it? Basically, instead of asking the other company what you want from them, essentially.
I would tell them what you want rather than what the other company offered. Generally speaking, I'd say I received an offer from this other company. If you were able to offer me 250, you know, I could accept right away. Now, if you plan on going back and forth, don't say you'll accept right away, of course, because it's great to take that 250 offer back to the other company and say, hey, they offered me this much. You know, what can you do? Without looking like you're playing them. It's totally fair for you to negotiate how much you're worth. If you have multiple offers, you're in high demand, then you should fight to get what you can.
All right.
Yeah,
No,
I
thank you.
don't think there's a problem with telling them how much you want to accept.
Oh, no worries. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Let me talk about stock for a second. Amazon's really big on giving you a lot of stock, and you'll be like, wow, I just got an offer with $400,000 of stock. But look at the way that it vests. Vests meaning how much of that stock you actually are given each year. So Amazon, for example, they only give you 5 or 10% of that stock after your first year there. And then you get like 10 or 15% in the second year, and you get most of that stock in years 3 and 4. That's assuming that you stay with Amazon for 3 or 4 years, which in some cases is unlikely because people work really hard there. So just take that into account. Take the stock number with a grain of sand, because usually it will vest over 3 or 4 years, and sometimes more of it vests on the back half of that 4 years than up front. And so it's not like you're getting 400 grand cash. I've got a buddy who started with Tesla like 8 years ago, got a bunch of stock. He's like ready to retire now because their stock has done so well. Amazon stock has, of course, done extremely well over the last 20 years now, but that stock number is not the same as cash. So take it with a grain of sand. A couple other things I wanted to mention. When you're on camera, try to be eye level. You don't want to like be looking down on people. You don't want them staring at your neck or your chin. So you want to be eye level with your camera. You want light on your face. If you've got a light behind you and no light on your face, then you're going to look like you're in the dark and it just looks unprofessional. I have umbrella lights in my office. They were like $30. They help a lot, especially if you're in a different time zone, doing an interview at 6 a.m. or late at night or something. It's good to have some real light on you when you're speaking. Think about your background. I talked to a guy who had a bunch of skulls on his background. He was, a big hunter or whatever in Texas. And I said, hey, maybe some interviewers don't appreciate dead animals in your background. And he said, oh, I didn't think of that. So all these little things you can do to improve your chances of having a good interview. Doesn't mean you have to change who you are, but I would try not to unnecessarily offend people with, dead animals in an interview. Same thing with beards. I had a buddy that I graduated with, and he insisted on keeping his post Navy service beard. He grew it out for a year, and that was really important to him. And he did not want to compromise. I said, okay, but you might get turned down for opportunities because of that. And I think he was discounted because he chose to have a beard. And I'm not saying that's fair. I'm not saying he should have compromised who he was to get a job, but there may be consequences to not playing the game, especially for a company like Goldman Sachs. Like, they have a very typical expectation, right or wrong, of what they want people to look like. They want very clean shaven, people to apply. So they're more traditional in that sense, I guess you'd say. But there's actually a study out there that says that the more facial hair you have, the less you will be offered. And I got to find that actual link, but something to keep in mind, wear the tie, shave, even if you don't want to, might help you out. Think about your background, have good lighting. All those little things will set you up for success. Practice your interview responses. I've got a list of all these questions we went through with kind of my breakdown of what you should think about. And then you should pick stories that you want to tell to reinforce each point and be ready to talk for 30 seconds to a minute in response to any of these questions. And if you do that, you do really good interview prep, you're going to blow a lot of people out of the water who are trying to think off their feet about what their biggest weakness is. And it's not going to go so well. So you will be more confident and you will do better. You will get more offers and you will get higher offers if you really prepare for your interviews ahead of time. And be prepared to have that salary conversation because it might happen sooner than you want it to. And again, try not to tell people how much you currently make, even if they ask directly, because that won't help. Give them a range. So those are my main points. Any final questions?
All right. Well, thank you again, John. This was awesome.
My pleasure.